Hey everybody! Today I'm shooting from the Rhoda and Madeleine Henning pottery studio in Brooklyn, and all these pottery works behind me are not mine. They're made by the students, so I can't take credit for any of them. And since we're in the studio today, I figured why not talk about some of the pottery terms that we potters like to throw around, and especially if you're a beginner and you hear these words, you're like, what are they saying? What do they mean? Well, I'm going to talk about some pottery lingo. The first term we're going to look at is throwing. This refers to taking a clay blob, throwing it on the pottery wheel, centering it and pulling it up in the shape that you'd like. Granted, in the beginning, you can't always get the shape that you want, but this takes practice, so please don't feel discouraged. This is a photo of me trying to center clay for the first time. Look at the concentration on my face, and if you look really closely, you'll see tiny clay particles all over my clothes. One thing that I can't emphasize enough is stretching. Stretch your arms, stretch your hands, your fingers, your palms. Especially if you're doing a lot of wheel work, this is very important because you can actually sustain injuries, and also to your back, so stretch your back as well because of the position that you're sitting in. I did sustain an injury last year and it wasn't fun, so I can speak from personal experience, and I know a lot of potters that do a lot of wheel work have experienced the same. So just remember that it's always good to just keep healthy and keep active and stretch. When that wheel starts spinning really, really fast and you're making your object on the clay wheel and you're using sharp tools to trim it, please just be careful. I've almost lost a few fingers that one time when I was starting out. So just remember, safety first. We all make mistakes. And also, if the clay isn't centered properly, it may actually fly off the bat. That happens too. The next word is leather hard. This is when the clay has been dried halfway through and you can usually start carving away at it. So if you've made something on the pottery wheel, this is where you usually can trim away at it. And sometimes you can go a bit overboard. I know I used to. I'd make too many holes, carve away too much, and be so excited, and I'd put it in the kiln and it looks like this. And when it came out of the kiln, it looks like this. That's just because the bottom wasn't able to support the top, and some areas were thinner than others. So just ensure that you plan ahead and that your item is structurally sound. Or what you can do is make a few items, do a few testers, put in the kiln and see what happens. And then maybe it comes out and you can actually use it. I know a lot of my stuff I have. Next we have greenware. This is where your clay is still busy drying. You finish sculpting and shaping it, but it's sitting on the rack and it's just drying out a little before you put it in the kiln. If you put an item in the kiln that's not fully dried all the way through, it can actually crack and break in the kiln. I wouldn't suggest making any changes to it. Also, if you've made something on the pottery wheel and you're new and the bottom of your, for example, vase is this thick and the walls of the vase are this thin, it could possibly actually detach in the kiln, meaning you'll have a bottom and you'll have a top and it'll just be like boop, because they're not the same consistency, because this probably hasn't dried all the way through as well. If that does happen, maybe use the bottom as a bowl and the top as a pen holder. No one needs to know it doesn't have a bottom. It's not like I've done that. The next one is bone dry. This is when your clay has been dried all the way through, and at this stage it is super, super, super fragile. I wouldn't suggest moving it around too much, touching it, picking it up. Rather just leave it where it is and put it straight in the kiln when it's ready. When I was still new and I was super excited about ceramics, I was like, oh my gosh, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And it actually happened in this studio. I'm still mortified. I'm haunted by that day and I don't think I'll ever get over it. I was looking at a lady's beautiful platter and she'd made these amazing handles and I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. And I went and I touched it and I don't know what I did, but that handle just went yeah. Oops. I did, however, leave a note with my name and my telephone number. She never contacted me. I never actually found out who it was. Until this day, I feel so bad. So whoever you are, just know that I'm really, really sorry. The next one is Bisque. This is where your clay item has been fired for the first time and it comes out. At this stage, it's rock hard. I wouldn't suggest throwing it around or smashing it against anything. Obviously, it's pottery, it will break. So at this point, it will show you everything that you may or may not have done. For example, there may be a crack or it may have warped a little. Clay does have a memory. If it does have a crack, usually I don't go further than this stage because I know there's no way back. As soon as you glaze it, the crack actually becomes bigger. So rather just accept your fate. That's also why if you're doing a large order, you sometimes make 1 or 2 extra, just to be safe. The next one is dry foot. This refers to the foot of the pot that has been cleared of glaze. So if you've made something on the pottery wheel, you'll obviously clean the foot, or if it's got a flat bottom, you'll clean the entire bottom of glaze off of it, and also a little bit on the sides, because once you put something in the kiln, the glaze sometimes does drip down. So it's important just to maybe take a little bit off the side of the bottom of the pot, because if that thing fires and sticks to your kiln, yeah, it's a pain in the ass and totally avoidable. So always remember to clean the bottom of your pot. Next, we're looking at glazed. This is when you've applied glaze to your clay item after it's been bisqued and you've put in the kiln. So this is where it could come out with a glossy finish or a bit more matte, depending on your preference or what you'd like. This is also where the kiln can give you some surprises. So you could be absolutely elated and happy with what comes out of the kiln and be like, woohoo! Or you could be like, what is that? So I actually keep spreadsheets of my failures. So if something had gone wrong in the kiln and why it went wrong and what I actually did to make it go wrong, because it's always your fault, it's never the kiln's fault, remember that. You literally do have a record of all your failures, but that's okay. And just move on. Next one is luster. This refers to metal surfaces that are painted on glazed items, and these are derived from precious metals. A really good example is the gold trimming on a plate. This is applied after you've glazed it, and then it will be put in the kiln to be fired again. When I was younger, I thought, oh my goodness, this gold trimming on a plate is so old school. And now, oh, it's beautiful. It's just very, very pricey, so be sure of your design before you start using it. Next, we have a bat. This is a flat removable surface that you use to put on the pottery wheel. You put your clay on it and then you throw your clay piece. Each pot is different. Some use clamps to attach their bat to their wheel. I, however, use clay that I center and just flatten out and let it dry a little, and I put my bat on that. Just a little side note, make sure that your bat is secure on your clay if you don't have clamps, because once that wheel starts going, it could fly off and you never know what it's going to hit. Just